Hey, good morning. So I'm going to continue reading, calling this part 3 in the book Stolen Identity, Unveiling the Real John F. Kennedy Jr. by John F. Kennedy Jr. You can go to his website, and I hope I got this correct. It's called The Real John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. That should take you to his website. He's got a YouTube channel also. John F. and I think that's the keyword, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s YouTube channel. He's online all over the place, and you can buy this book. It's available on Amazon, or he has a personal address. You could actually write to him, and when he goes online, he uploads from his house and talks to you, and you can also talk to him. So that's the direct way to go. If you want to hear this book read or whatever straight away from yourself, what I'm doing, the reason I'm reading it is another thing. So if you listen to me read it, you're going to have to hear all kind of other stuff in between, because I'm doing a project right now, as it's turned out. I haven't read the book yet all the way through, so as I read it here, this is my first time reading it. And it's already kind of triggered things, and I've decided to use it for that, to kind of share some things along the way, because, and I don't know, John, you're so busy, you probably won't hear this, but, and I know it would be fine with you for me to do this, unless for some reason my mentioning my friend's name is something that brings up, because he had a good life and a bad life, so, but what's happening is, audience, I've been wanting to talk about Ken Izdebski since he died and before, publicly, and mention his name and my involvement and a few other things, but I haven't, I've had caution. It's not fear. It's like you're waiting for the right moment. You don't want to push too far ahead about anything. So I've been holding on to bits and pieces of this man's story. Every time I get ready to make a video about him, eulogy fashion, or write no. Well, yesterday in the other thing, when I was reading and I said his name for the first time out loud, even if people that hear me and know him, it's probably, or even if the people that don't want me to talk hear it, I embedded that information in John's story. That's exactly what I was like, God, how do I start releasing my personal thing, right? And now, the only people that hear me talk about Kenny, you have to go through listening to this fucking video. So John has the main stage set, and then the rest of us coming in around him, around that era, and all this MK drama and all this bad shit are coming in around John, because his voice, his presence is helping to open it up big time, all this stuff. So anyway, so it's like, oh man, this is great. Okay, so if the random audience listens to me talk and then interrupt when I read something and say something about 7, and this is what I do, I call him one of his 3 names depending on what I'm going to say about him. I got used to doing that. Living with him, if he was acting more like 7, the gangster, the mean guy, and the artist, I'd call him 7. But it started out affectionate because the name triggered me. But his name Kenny is a American legal name with the military. All the nurses and doctors call him Kenny, and Kenny is like a easy name to process. Horst, his German name, they took that away from him. But guess what? In the boys' home in Rudesheim, his number, they gave all the boys numbers. They didn't call him by their first name. His number was 70. He started out being named in the Jesuit situation, and he was he was a special assistant since a little kid to these fucking priests and stuff. His number was 70. When I met him, I asked him why his name was 7. He told me, well, some rainbow lady at a rainbow gathering called him that. but he used it to sign his art, and people around here knew him as Seven, still do. Kenny, only the nurse, his hospital world and his friends knew him as Ken. Certain other people knew him as Ken. And then Horst, nobody called him Horst in America. It was just his family. Anyway, so I'm just saying, John's story has actually opened this gateway for me to ramble on about this friend of mine because of how it is, like, okay, I'm sure I'm speaking for 1,000,000 female wives and nurses and male husbands and nurses and doctors and caregivers. There's a whole ton of us that we just get people we deal with, and up until now, a lot of us don't know why the person is so fucking whacked or why they keep self-injuring all the time when they're 60 years old. And guess who's involved with making that happen? Guess who's involved with experimentado? Under what hospitalos? You know what I mean? I have stories about the VA you guys would not... I have stories about this particular VA hospital. I'm talking drug, prostitution, the whole thing. And, you think it's okay. Adults make free choices, but it sort of surprised me. And other things happen at this particular hospital. Ooh, let me tell that story. But right now, I'm going to read. And it's so cool. Look what John did. He could have grown up and taken on any kind of personality, lifestyle, but he's like this biker. It's so cool. Honestly, man. I still, oh Lord, he's gonna have a motorcade one day, and it's gonna be miles long. Okay, so anyway, now I'm gonna read. Thank you for bearing with me. Oh, and thanks to the very supportive comments that I've gotten on these last two videos. I want to address one of those people, but you don't know what to say online. We never met. It's really a weird thing, but anyway. Very interesting that you showed up. And thanks, anyone. Like, if I make a video and someone likes it, it does sort of, the dopamine sort of helps to keep generating creativity. The dopamine. Okay, so I ended on this page 38. And it turns out it's the last page on this chapter. But... you're going to go buy the book anyway or whatever, so I don't have to do this perfectly, with all due respect to John himself. So I think he'd be okay with me mixing all this up, I hope, unless it turns out that at one point Seven was writing. See, Seven said he rode with the Hells Angels for a while, and then he went quiet. It's almost like, see, he was mean. He did bad things when he grew up too. Sometimes victims grow up and they... for various reasons, they escape their perpetrators and then they become like them. So anyway, he never quite said how long he rode with them or why he left, but he could have, he might have made some enemies along the way, you never know. I'm like, but that would have been late. Anyway, let me not talk. So, but, why did I say that? Okay. Alrighty, so here we go. And this was back in the 70s, by the way, so not recently. It would have been late 70s. Okay. God, I'm just tripping. Because of this timeline business, and I've got so much missing time from 74 to 80 that it's not even funny. So if I meet people or hear names, from that era, like, what were you doing? So, coming together with people that, like, because of when Seven and I got to know each other and compared notes over the years, we could have known each other when I was 12 and he was 15 in Hollywood, literally. And reading these books has forced me to actually admit that I don't know how, but this term traffic, it could have applied to me, and I've got way more stories about it, but I don't have any. I can't come out and say, oh, I was trafficked by blah, blah, blah. But 7 was trafficked. I mean, literally. But what happens with some of us kids is that they make you think that you're just going somewhere because you want to. And then you meet up with, it's really, really tricky. But I thought I was pregnant when I was 12. So how normal is that, right? Anyway, okay, so here we go. Okay, this is John reading, John's book, not me, although it blends right in. I was used in MK for several purposes. The first reason was that Wayne wanted me to witness and remember certain events so that I could write this testimony. They all pertain to the nefarious Q plan, which brainwashes its followers not to do anything when they are disturbed, when they see disturbing events unfold. QAnons, as they call themselves, believe they need not act and should, quote, trust the plan, unquote, became a secretive group. They should trust the plan because a secretive group of military agents called White Hats are working to subvert the plans of the enemy, and therefore they need not fear. Alarming government overreach should not be an indication of a pending communist takeover. Instead, Anons are encouraged to believe that such activity is just a movie. Just a movie, in quotes. According to, quote, the plan, unquote, rather than panic when nefarious events appear to unfold, Q followers should rejoice because, as per the cryptic Q clock decodes, this means that peace, prosperity, and health, thanks to a benevolent group of aliens who gifted humanity with a miraculous healing technique called medbeds, are about to be unveiled. The crashing of the economy, civic unrest, and the threats of a civil or world war are all reasons to get excited because it means that their salvation, courtesy of Donald Trump and JFK Jr., who they believe faked his death, is coming to save the day. But Donald Trump died and was replaced in 1989, and John died in 1999. Let me tell you about it. Okay, next chapter, the death of Donald Trump. And I'll just say one thing right now is that I recently heard Benjamin Fulford also said at one point in the past that this happened in that same year. So I'm just saying, this is the first time I've heard of this myself. Okay, the death of Donald Trump. And one more thing, the reason there's no visuals on my video as I talk, not to dishonor John by not showing his book cover, but my channel does get targeted for whatever, so the less I put video evidence of whatever, the safer I might be, as small as I am. If someone doesn't want me to talk about something, they shut me, I've had stuff, so that's why I don't do that. Okay. The death of Donald Trump. Wayne wanted me to one day be able to share that the real Donald Trump died in a helicopter crash in 1989. He took me to witness this event. Despite being under MK Ultra, I vividly recall being at the crash site on the Garden State Parkway near Atlantic City, New Jersey. I can confidently say that Donald Trump perished in that crash and that Wayne meant for me to witness it. Atlantic City was a pet project of Wayne's, and I believe he had it in his mind that I'd run the place one day. I remember when he brought me there some years after it was built up. We walked up and down the boardwalk, and he told me he owned the whole place from the vendors on the boardwalk to the casinos. Donald Trump was family and was put in place to run the casinos with some other mafia tycoons. But Trump and his partners must have done something to piss the family off, because they were killed in that helicopter crash, which was made to look like an accident. Okay, I'm going to interrupt. I'm sorry it's rude if you want me to keep going. I just have to comment every time I see something that makes me think about something about myself. I'm being selfish in this video. The word tycoon. Every time I see the word tycoon now, what do I think of? Tycoon Shakerays. A few years ago, a corporate company came out online selling the kind of instruments I make, and the name of their company was Tycoon Shakeray. There's more to the story, but I just want to throw that in there, just so y'all know. Tycoons came after the native, or the freaking traditional African instrument called shakeray. The tycoons tried to take it over. Okay, sorry I interrupted. Okay. This must have done something to piss the family off, because they were killed in a helicopter crash which was made to look like an accident. Wayne wanted me to see it, to know that Trump was dead. When we arrived, they were pulling the bodies out of the plane and onto the stretchers. The last body they pulled off was Donald Trump. And Wayne pointed at him and said, "Look." Trump was a helicopter pilot and had been flying the chopper when the rotor blew off, and they crashed onto the Garden State Parkway. The papers reported that only 3 executives died in that crash, but I know Trump died too. Someone's going to obviously research this dates and everything. 3 executives died in that crash. So there was a helicopter crash back then. Garden State Parkway. Go look it up. Okay. Trump was a helicopter, but I've been flying the chopper. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm trying to turn the page. He was replaced with a body double who probably couldn't fly a helicopter to save his life. The real Trump would never let himself be chauffeured around in a helicopter as his double does today. People must understand that the person who replaced Trump and ran the country for 4 years is a criminal, possibly a Russian spy. Oh, jeez. I haven't read this yet, you guys. Okay, the Russians paid Melania to marry Trump because they knew that having a good-looking wife would boost his image and increase his chances of winning the presidency. Shit. Melania kind of looks like a man, a clone these days. Oh my God, what if this is true? That's fucking true. Okay, that's another thing Wayne brought me to see. It was on a private plane. Melania sat at a table, and in front of her was a suitcase overflowing with jewels. She looked at it and said, "It's not enough. It's not enough for me to marry that cocksucker." Oh my God. Sorry. This is not funny. Look how quietly I'm talking in the machine. Oh my God. You guys, he doesn't talk about this stuff on his live stream or anything, so I hope it's okay. I'm reading this. It's not funny at all, but, you know, it remains to be validated, that's all. But honest to God, I do know this is how they act and talk. These political wealthy people are just as fucking low as... Just go watch movies about it. They all fight, they all are nasty as fuck, and then their suits are on and the whole thing. This could be possible. It's really a hard one pill to swallow, isn't it, though? Fuck. You know, I'm like, I never heard this particular story until the last couple of weeks. This is why we laugh. Okay. So fucking, what a Matrix zoo. Okay. Now, here we go. Oh my God. Okay, in 2016, Wayne brought me to the White House while I was under. All he had to do was flash his badge, and we got in to see the then President Donald Trump. Oh man, if this is true, the world is finished. I mean, and I'm not saying I doubt it, but honest to God, this is why I'm reading this, man. This is like the best service I can give to my country right now. On behalf of those who could not speak out and stuff like that. And in memory of all my friends who died because I spoke too much. All he had to do was flash his badge and we got in to see the then President Donald Trump. I said, I'm the real John Kennedy Jr. No one will even recognize the fact that I exist. I could kill somebody in broad daylight and get away with it. Trump told me to, quote, get a fucking lawyer, unquote. Then, later that week, he paraphrased what I said at a rally, announcing to the crowd, now this is the fake Trump, announcing to the crowd after that interaction, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose voters. So, that comment this is back to me reading, sorry. That comment earned him a lot of backlash from the media, as he must have known it would, but it made a point of saying it anyway. It's crazy how my whole life they've kept me poor and down and out while they live lives of wealth and privilege. Yet I've seen how time and time again my existence plays so prominently in their psyches. It reminds me of what Wayne said about the book on Opal May being, quote, closed, unquote. I think the book on the real John Kennedy Jr. is still very much open, and many people know more about me than I do about myself. Okay, next chapter, The Death of John John. I attended St. David's School in New York City on and off from age 6. My memories of being there are sporadic. In my mind, I wasn't in attendance for more than a few weeks each year. However, it is possible that I was there in an MK Ultra trance state for extended periods. I do recall that it was there that John John, my double, first appeared in my class and sat beside me. As mentioned, he was called John John because he was a double. However, he didn't like the name, and whenever anyone called him by it, he spat in their face. I'm not exactly sure where he came from, but as we got older, Jackie and Aristotle referred to him occasionally as my brother. By that point, I was so messed up I didn't know what to think. But now it occurs to me that John John could have been the son of Aristotle and his mistress, making him my stepbrother. Whatever the case, he must have been a very conflicted child. I remember one day he punched me in the face for no reason. That's something I witnessed my father do, this is me, to my 12-year-old stepsister in the middle of a family visit. Just jumped out of his chair and slapped her in the face for no apparent reason. Everybody was quiet after that. I'd never in my life seen my father hit anyone like that till I grew up. Okay, anyway, sorry. Everything was photo ops in those early years. I'm going to show you the photo on the page here. At Palisades Amusement Park, May 5th, 1969. They're both in here. This is the life in that world. You grow up and wear... I never wore any kind of... Okay, anyway. So I did that. Let me close it because I have to read this way. Okay, everything was photo ops. Oops. Everything was photo ops in those early years after my father's murder. And below is a famous photograph of the two of us with some other kids on an outing to an amusement park. I remember that day. The Secret Service made me wear my father's size 12 shoes, and they were so big and uncomfortable that I had to sit down and watch while the other kids ran around, went on rides, and had fun. They also had to pick us up. Oh, wait. They also had us pick up a black kid on the way there for publicity because it was during the civil rights struggle. That boy's name was Denzel Washington. And I remember him saying, "Yeah, they're going to make me a star. They're going to make me big in Hollywood." And I said, "Oh, that's cool." In the picture, John is showing me the ring he got from John Gotti, and I'm telling him about my ring, which I got from the Queen of England. John got his ring for committing murder when he was 9. That's the way the mob works. They lure kids into committing murder and film them. After that, they have them for life. You play along or you go down for murder. After John replaced me, he became the man everyone knew as John Kennedy Jr. My guess as to how they made the switch was that after I left, the kids stopped calling him John and he became just John. Then the following year, they kept the same boys in each of the 2 classes except for him. Since he had never been in their class and they only knew him as John, he could easily start the next grade as John Kennedy Jr. This is a guess. I don't pretend to understand the ins and outs of these complex schemings. However, I have 2 more photographs that show John and I together. And the next page shows the other photograph, but you guys will have to go by the book. Okay, the photograph below shows the 2 of us in the 6th grade at the Collegiate School in New York. We were learning about World War II, Nazis, and Hitler, whom the boys in the back seemed disturbingly to admire. John is 4th from the right, with his tongue sticking out, and I am the 3rd in the front, 3rd in from the left, with my hair tinted blonde, thanks to the Quigleys dousing it with lemon juice. My expression bears a noticeable MK Ultra glaze. I wonder why they use lemon juice instead of any regular kind of dye. There must be a reason. Because that's what Seven did that's what he told me, that his grandmother taught him and his mother did it. And I thought it was just some German thing, that they particularly used lemons that way. But I saw a picture of his parents before he was born. His mother had brown hair like mine, but after the 1965 disaster and when they came to America, her hair was always blonde. And Seven had naturally blonde curly hair, but until the 90s he had brown hair. So they all changed their hair color when they came to America. So I'm just saying, it's hard to believe some of these things unless you know or live with somebody that you can look at firsthand and say, yep, that's what your life was like. Oh boy. That happens, Anyway, it was just helpful for me in a way to, here I am living with this guy, and I'll just share this part. I had a restraining order on him shortly after we met, and we even had a sexual thing for all y'all. But he was so whacked that he was gaslighting and trying to do things to da-da-da-da, so I had to I got a restraining order on, but during that year long, he stayed away from me all right, but he got himself in a near fatal accident and ended up in a nursing home, or ended up in the hospital going down to 90 pounds, and he had injured himself in such a way he was going to have to stay in bed for 1 year and not get out of bed at all, but have wound care every day for his backside and other things. So he was destined to go to a nursing home. And my friend said, don't call him, but I had a very significant signal to go ahead and do it. And long story short, I fixed up his house so the VA would send him to the house, and I became his 24/7 nurse. But we lied to the VA, said we were married, and so I got on the payroll at the VA, so they paid me $1,400 a month, and he paid me $1,000 plus room and board and food just to live with him. And he had a hospital bed in the house and all the gear and the visiting nurse twice a week, and I did the rest 24/7. I never saw a human being stay on their back or their left side only for 1 year and never get out of bed. He couldn't transfer anything, and he already had the urine thing was already a thing, and he had surgery that had removed intestines, so now he had a stoma thing. In other words, now his shit came out of his front side, and he could actually, instead of having to transfer to, I'm sorry, I gotta say this, instead of having to transfer to the bathroom, he just had to lay in bed and change that stoma bag every couple of days. It kind of made his life easier. We laughed a lot about things like that. This man he tolerated things that, so for a whole year he stayed in that bed. Why did I bring that up? Because because during that time is when YouTube was going on and all this stuff, so I would see videos and say, hey, look at this, listen to this guy, that guy, and he'd listen and look, and I have to say this story and then maybe I'll stop this video. Back when around 2015, before the election, and David Seaman came out and the Pizzagate story was going on, well, we had a routine. Kenny would be staying in the bed, and I'd make his breakfast and all that, and I'd be in the kitchen. I'd have, privacy in there, and he'd be out there doing his thing between 9 and 12, so it was a lot of free time. But one day I saw a video that was reporting someone had taken a photo of the inside of a meeting of all these top bankers, specifically banker CEOs, who were at a drag party. They were sitting in this audience chair, and every one of the men was dressed in drag, like women. And someone had got a shot of this, and I wonder if it was James Munder. Remember James Munder, who got killed on the LA freeway? I wonder if it was James that posted it. But anyway, I was watching this, and I might get in trouble for this, but Mike, if you're listening with your partner, you're going to have to listen to the whole JFK story too to hear me say this. So ha 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 ha. Seven's brother was married for 40 years at that time, now 50 years, to a man who's the CEO of a Bank of America. So when I'm watching this drag thing and knowing the history of his brother a little bit, and the whole family in a little bit, I'm paying closer attention to this report about this meeting, or this party, or whatever, annual drag ball, or whatever, with the bankers, right? So I see that, and I didn't show Seven. I didn't take it in there and show him, but I swear to God, like a couple days after that, or shortly after that, the brother calls up to talk to him, because they would always talk. Guess what the brother told him? And when he hung up the phone, Seven told me this. He said, oh yeah, Mike and Jim just went to this drag party. He described the exact fucking party. I kid you not. And Seven used to say how his brother liked donating to John Kerry and everything. His brother's like a computer whiz. His brother worked for Hasbro, or one of the he was like a CEO of a toy company. Need I say more? The trafficking industry deals with toy companies. Let me just lay it there. Gotta have toys. I'm not accusing anyone of nothing. I'm just saying. I'll say this, add it too. Seven, he was an art car person, made several art cars, and attended more than one Burning Man festival in the 90s. So all y'all know him for the Blue Ride and a couple other art cars. And one of them was this car that was covered. He told me that he collected, you know, when you go to fast food restaurants, they give you little toys. He said he collected a bunch of those and he glued them all over his car. So it's the part of him that I do not like at all. I don't even like to admit or acknowledge that he did bad things, and he told me some of them. And every time he did a couple of bad things, he always got away, never would get arrested. He had law enforcement covering for him and all kind of other high-ups covering for him and just let him go into that wheelchair. He didn't go to regular jail because of he got away with stuff. So when I speak of him with fondness and the love and the empathy for what he went through as a child, then there's the rest of the story, which was why I did have to part ways with him toward the end before he died, 3 years before he died, cold turkey. You know, and it's like, is he important? Is it important for me to tell more about the details? Well, I guess it is, because some people are still like, oh, don't talk. Don't tell about his life story. Well, he's dead now. His mother died. His brother's still alive. And the Jesuit people are still alive. Let's see, who else by association would be upset for me talking? You see? Am I ready to just lay it down and like, well, in the middle of reading John Kennedy's book? Yes. This is like, it's so much fun, because unless, you know, if someone hears this and they're upset, well, they had to listen, they had, where did she say that? In the video where she's reading the book by John Kennedy Jr. See? Thank you, John, for providing what do you call it? Like this feeling of a shielding. Or like, okay, y'all, if you're going to hear about Seven, you're going to hear about John at the same time. Or vice versa. You know, it's been a burden to me and us who hold the secrets of other people's goddamn families. I don't have anything to do with it. But it's a burden to me because it comes on as see something, say something. Oh, let's see. Is my silence creating someone's violence? Is what I'm talking about. So anyway, okay, so anyway, did I finish? Thanks for listening, everybody. Hey, Sharon. Anyway, I don't want to talk to you, but I don't know if I'm supposed to talk to people, huh? Jeepers. What a life. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Let me just... Did I finish the chapter? Oh, yeah. I finished this chapter, so I'm going to shut up. How long is it? 38 minutes? Oh. And there's more pictures, but I'll show you this. Wait. YouTube might stick it in the thumbnail if I show it. But it just looks like a... Oh, okay. It looks like a random guy. This is our man, John Kennedy Jr. This is the only... He said... For comparison, the photo on the left is taken from an old ID card, one of the few pictures I have of myself. And any other questions you have, you'll have to just go look it up yourself. I'm not here like, oh, I'm going to answer questions for him. That's unnecessary. I'm just going to comment when I want to. So if that gets in the thumbnail, that's okay. I tell you, man, these scientists and these laboratories, they need to go fucking bye-bye big time. I mean, this is... And these families that commit... I mean, isn't it criminal to, like, hurt people? Jesus Christ. Okay, so, let me see. Should I keep reading? Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't the end of the chapter, so guess what? I'm going to still read. And if anybody... Oh, let me just say this about my personal story about Kenneth Horst Izdebski. If you go now online and look him up, you'll see an obituary. This is what I was going to make my video about, opening up with this obituary. So, I didn't find out he died. He died in a car wreck in 2022 on December 8th, the same day that John Lennon died. Okay, that means something. His van accidentally swerved to the right and went headlong into a particular ditch where the water goes. So he died in a car wreck, and we can only guess why his wheel turned sharply to the right and he went through that little rail and into that ditch by the gas station. But that's another story. What was I going to say? I totally forgot. That was about how he died, and then I didn't hear about that he died for 2 weeks. Oh well, I guess I'll have to forget that part. But anyway, doing these videos, and let's see, I'm only about a third of the way through the book, so sorry folks, audience. Don't put up with listening to me doing the long version or reading his book. Go get it yourself. I'm using this to interject little details about Kenny's story. So that... Oh, I was going to say the obituary. So he died, and I go to the old newspaper. So I go online and I find the obituary, and apparently his brother Mike wrote the obituary. Now let me tell you one thing. The photograph of his face in the obituary is a self-portrait that he painted shortly after he got out of that hospital coma era, and with the brown hair. Mike, of all the photos of 7 that you could have put in the obituary, that one looks nothing like him. I should show you guys and do a video what Mike did with the obituary. There were facts in the obituary I'd never heard. And other stuff where he sugar-coated 7's life and skipped over the worst parts. So, if I make a video about Kenny, I'm going to sit down and show you the pieces of evidence, the artwork that I still have and everything, and just blast through the story. But I don't know if I'm ever going to really do that alone, separate from dropping little stories in between. Because this is what they do. They cover the shit up for generations to come. And I have a piece of paper over there that I found in the house, because after he died, I zoomed over to the house to see what was left there before someone cleaned it out, and I found some things. And one of them was a note that he was writing to a nurse. You could tell he wasn't able to talk, and it looked recent, and he scribbles over, please don't tell anyone what we talked about. So, I mean, up until his death, he was like, I tell you, the poor man was being hounded constantly throughout his life. When I showed up, that's another point I want to make about a handler. When I showed up in his life, and then he injured himself conveniently so I'd stick with him, They'd bring himself near death so they could get someone to stay and help them out. The hospital was like heaven half the time. When he was on the street, he'd get in trouble, hurt himself really bad, accidents galore, then go get new body parts at the VA and spend 3 months, 6 months a year in spinal cord area. There's so many stories about this person, but the reason they're important is because they point the finger at this whole huge thing. I've got a mug over there from Boys Town. His father donated to Boys Town. his story is also big, and he died and everything. But it's big in terms of what he went through and what he didn't tell any of us, even me, until toward the end of his life. He told me the biggest secret of all, that if I had known that secret, I probably would have avoided him with a 10-foot pole. And it wasn't about him doing bad things. It was about what he survived, who's a famous person who got caught. So I'm saving that one for later. But here, me, why am I attracted and why am I living with this person? Why am I with this person? And I know the answer, and I don't regret it, but still, it's like they say things like, oh, when you're healed from your trauma and all this, you'll attract people that are more of the caliber of the kind of person you want to be with, instead of being attracted to other trauma-based people. And my answer is, oh yeah? Well, I just met a fucking genius of high rank who was also a trauma-based individual, so I got all of it in one. Trauma bonded with a fucking master's degree person. What is success? And when is it that the person what is an upstanding relationship? This man, he took the best care of me of anybody I'd ever been with. Honest to God, he had qualities in him. He was husband material. He had been married 9 years as well. And it's like, I'm sitting here with this guy, and I'm like, damn. I had other women be like, oh, I wish my husband was like him. I mean, the guy was fucking Romeo on the good side. Oh, that's what I want to close with about handlers. Okay, so he gets with me, and now he's stuck in the bed for a year. Guess what? He couldn't go out and do damage. He couldn't go out and join the parties. I witnessed firsthand him being invited to these nefarious, illegal parties in the text message that threaten, if you don't come, we're not going to invite you again, kind of thing. And I knew who the people were, and he said to them, no, I'm married, I don't go no more, because I wasn't going to do any of that. So he had refuge with a straight vanilla kind of female, right? So I kept him off the streets, basically. I kept him out of the local people I found out were setting him up with a teenager for a little bit of a night. I found out about so much, and I lost respect for so many people here that, However, I was here when I was a teenager. I was 13. I was taking initiative as a teenager to go see this one, see that one. I can't pass a lot of judgment on teenagers, what they do. I'm sure I look like I didn't want to be where I was several times, and nobody, rescued me out of it. My concern is for the youngest children before puberty. I have more concern there. I have concern for teenagers too, but I can't be a hypocrite, because I did stuff at 12, 13. I had been, trained to do that, to go outward about it, because here's a secret. If you're a pedophile, how do you groom a child? You just passively allow and don't put boundaries up, and you encourage things to a toddler and everything else, and you just let it happen, and pretty soon you'll have a precocious child, sexually and otherwise. Doesn't take much. Doesn't take threats or anything. And you can groom a child to become a sexual servant without saying a word. That's what I experienced. Without saying a word, without threats, without harm, without violence, you can create a child to grow up and do what I did by the time I was 12. Tricky, ain't it? Okay, you guys, how was that? I said I wouldn't go over an hour. Ooh, 49 minutes. I was going to do something all different today. Here I am. But I feel like I better hurry and get this book done and get all these chapters done so it fills my channel, because I don't want to keep talking about myself, but talking about myself is hidden in these pages. Thank you, John. I hope it's okay I'm doing that with your book. I don't mean disrespect, but I think it's okay. I'm sharing, like you said. Okay. I keep reading. I saw John and Caroline's replacements on and off over the years. I had the impression my replacement was losing favor with Wayne. We were in our early 30s. So this would be the 90s. Okay. And I bumped into John at a party. My cousin Adam was there, and the three of us were talking. John said he wanted to be John Gotti. I said, yeah, you want to be the next John Gotti and run New York? He nodded and looked at me with a serious and determined gleam. Yeah, he said. I don't know what John was doing at that point. He pissed off the mob. I started hearing crazy stories about him, similar to the newspaper story about him falling out of his kayak swimming to the shore and breaking into someone's house. But I also heard there was more to that story than what was reported, and there had been some cover-up. Basically, John was losing it. A year or so after that, Wayne brought me to John's apartment building in New York City, a converted warehouse in Tribeca. We stood out front and waited until he coasted up to us on his bicycle. When he saw us, his face collapsed like a punctured tire. I gotta bend the pages. Hang on. Wayne said, "Are you going to give this guy some money? He's the real John Kennedy." John said, "I've given all my money to the mafia. I've already paid them all. I don't have anything to give him." As he wheeled his bicycle past us and into his building, I sensed the storm of panic brewing beneath the cool facade. I know the whole incident wasn't about money. Wayne wasn't like that. The point was to confront John and scare the shit out of him. John was telling Wayne that the mafia had him by the balls and he didn't have any money, which was probably true. I don't know what he did, but he must have pissed somebody off, and now he was a marked man, so he wanted to cash out and he needed money. After he started dating Carolyn, Wayne played a recording for me of the two of them chatting on a helicopter. They talked about how they wanted to kill me and take some hidden money they knew about. Carolyn said, "We'll kill Dave and take his money." Then she spoke about killing the fake Jackie, saying, "It's not really your mother." Before he met Carolyn, John had political aspirations, but after that it became all about money. He opened bank accounts all over New York and New Jersey, depositing cash. Then word got out that Jackie had cancer. I was, quote, under, quote unquote, when Wayne brought me to her Upper East Side apartment. The three of us stood in the kitchen. The fake Jackie, whom I'd known since my mother died in 1975, leaned over the table with her hands firmly planted. She spoke in a faraway voice as she stared unseeingly at the polished wood surface. She wasn't talking to me, but said, I really believe that the children poisoned me. That's why I'm dying." The information blasted through the carefully arranged room like a mobster in a bar fight, and my breath caught in my throat. Wayne wanted more information from her, and they left me in the kitchen and went to the living room together, where they spoke in animated, hushed tones. I sat down, putting my palms on the table where Jackie's had been, and waited. The next time Wayne brought me there, she was dead. I was under MK and instantly panicked. I felt like I was reliving the loss of my real mother. Jackie lay in her bed, her mouth agape. I couldn't bear that and instinctively took off my bandana, gently securing it under her chin and tying it to the top of her head. It seemed idiotic, but at the moment I couldn't stand seeing her mouth open like that. That was a good move, John. Jackie's boyfriend, Maurice Templesman, burst in and accused me of killing her. I looked at him in shock. I felt like I'd been slapped and didn't understand what he was saying. Later, realized Jackie told him John did it, and Maurice thought she meant me. Okay, so that fake Jackie was telling John that she thought John and Carolyn did it. Okay, so several days after Jackie's death, the press shot footage of John addressing the media. To my eyes, his demeanor seemed more amused than troubled, like a psychopath getting off on the public's belief in his lies. I caught up with him a few weeks later. Wayne brought me. Once again, I was in an MK-induced state, but I understood the purpose of the meeting. We arrived on a street corner in New York where a limo was parked outside a restaurant. Wayne indicated the open car door and told me to get in. I got in the limo and noticed John and Caroline dressed up. They were waiting for John's wife, Carolyn, to leave the restaurant. Why do they all have the same name? Okay, when I got in, Caroline didn't say anything. She just stared there with a little smile on her face. But when he saw me, John went from a calm lake to a raging storm in the blink of an eye. I said, I think it's time I came out as a real John Kennedy. His cheeks flamed with anger, and he said, hell no, you're never coming out, you motherfucker. He got out of the car and started yelling at Wayne. But Wayne just stood there, steadily fixing him with a measured, unwavering gaze. Then he said, your days are numbered. John stalked off, and that was that. The next chapter unfolded with cruel, callous greed. John and Carolyn, his wife, John and Carolyn auctioned off all my mother's belongings at Sotheby's auction house. So you can research that, anybody. Go see if before 1999 there was an auction of Kennedy stuff at Sotheby's. It broke my heart to see my family's legacy and possessions, including letters and artwork done by me personally, paraded in front of strangers and sold to the highest bidder. And I know exactly what he's talking about because the poster business, where the posters I had ended up going to the high auction and the fucking billionaire airplane. It's fucking wicked. The poster business, they even fucking, sorry, here I go cussing. The poster business, they even falsify. They do counterfeit posters of musicians. I'm not kidding. Anyway. There were photographs and portraits of me and my family, books and furniture that had been my father's, my mother's paintings and family jewels, including gifts given to her by my father, all auctioned off to strangers and gone forever. So if any of you bought some of that, but guess who? Guess who buys that auction crap? The billionaires sit in their jets with their little catalogs, and it's a tier system of how they value something. So and then they take it for voodoo and take it to their fucking castle and fucking do rituals with it so they can voodoo people on their possessions. I'm not saying everybody does that, but it is a thing. So John, his wife, and Caroline made $35 million at that auction, and none of it was theirs to sell. The bitter reality of that loss lingers to this day. Okay, in 1999, I was hanging out in front of a truck stop waiting for my next load. As mentioned, being chipped means that federal agents can locate me anytime. That day, John, my cousin Adam, and an agent approached me and asked if I wanted to join them for a wedding party in Hyannis Port. It was obviously a setup, and I responded, dude, I'm not going with you. They insisted. Come on, you'll have fun. They were doing their best to persuade me to go, and Wayne's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me, "You're never going to figure anything out unless you go." Deciding that unraveling the mystery was worth the risk, I agreed. I thought, well, I guess I'm going to go because I want to find out what's happening. The federal agent waved me toward his car and said, "Come on, you can just go with us." I shrugged and got in the car with them, leaving my truck behind. Our first stop was a house where we picked up Carolyn and her sister Lauren before heading to John's apartment in New York. Adam left us there, and I stayed in the apartment with John, Carolyn, and Lauren. That's when I realized that Carolyn was actually a man. The revelation surprised me, and I thought, oh, so he's gay? That really shook me up. The world's most eligible bachelor was gay. But I remember being forced to do all sorts of things when I was young to try to make me gay. I assumed the same was done to him. I don't know the point of it, but homosexuality is seen as an asset in that world. The next afternoon, we drove to an airport in New Jersey. As we approached a plane, I noticed they strategically positioned themselves between me and the terminal window so no one would see me. Once on the plane, Carolyn leaned forward to cover the window to hide me again. I was sure at this point they intended to kill me at the wedding. In that scenario, no one would know what happened to me. I would vanish without a trace. Once the plane was in the air, John became increasingly anxious. Everyone could feel it. Carolyn said, "What's the matter? Why are we turning?" John's voice rang with fear. "The plane won't steer. I can only go left." I suggested, "Just slow down and we'll keep going in a circle." But they wouldn't listen to me. Amid their arguing and panic, I pulled my life preserver out from under the seat and put it on. I told Lauren to do the same. Suddenly, with an unexpected impact, we slammed into the ocean. There was no warning, just an instantaneous crash. Struggling, I managed to open the door and pulled Lauren about 20 feet away from the sinking plane. I was treading water, trying to hold on to her, but she resisted, saying, "I have to go get my sister." I realized I'd have to let her go or knock her out, but she got away from me anyway and started swimming toward the sinking plane. I don't know if she made it inside or just got near it, but the plane went down fast at that point and she went with it. I was in the water for what seemed like an eternity, pushing down on the shoulders of my life preserver so I could see and scan the misty darkness for any sign of ship or shoreline. Hours passed, and I went into a state of shock. I don't remember when the ship finally appeared, but I was hoisted on board, shivering uncontrollably. Blankets were piled on me as I lay there. I recall seeing the captain pacing nervously in front of me before losing consciousness. Later, I discovered the captain's anxiety stemmed from a call from Bill Clinton ordering him to throw me back into the ocean. I'm reading this for the first time, and he doesn't talk about this online, you guys. He didn't say that part online. This is news to me, this detail. Maybe he did say it online, I don't know. Okay. So I don't know how much time passed before Wayne came and picked me up from the hospital. He drove me to the warehouse where they were reconstructing the plane, scattered wreckage covering the floor. A man approached Wayne and handed him a quarter, saying, "This was found in the steering mechanism. That's what took the plane down." Considering the imagery on the quarter, George Washington's face, it looked like a typical mob hit. George for George magazine. Everything they do rhymes, isn't it? Okay, Wayne brought me to another section of the warehouse, and I saw John's swollen body, grotesquely distorted. As with Donald Trump, I know that Wayne wanted me to witness the truth that he was dead. And that's what I need you to understand too. They are dead, both of them.